my name is Patty, and I've been a member of Searchlight since I was 11 years old. I've been coming ever since, and my life has changed dramatically since I've starting to get to know Christ more. And I would say one of the biggest things that has been transformed in my life has been my heart. Has been just a huge shift in the way that I relate to people, the way that I relate to God, and the way that I relate to feelings. I was raised in a home where feelings were not that valued, and if I was emotional or overreacted about something, it was needy. And the mantra in my household was always, don't get emotional about things. Even anger was sort of pathetic emotion, where only the pathetic, needy people got angry over little things or big things. Like, don't get emotional. That was the biggest thing. And unfortunately, it was a huge way that my dad disciplined myself and my siblings. And I grew up trying to perfect that way of being for most of my youth. I would constantly look at people around me and say, I'm glad I'm not like that. And when people would cry in front of me, I'd get super uncomfortable, and I didn't know what to do with it because I felt like they were being weak and they were being needy. And even if there were people that were close to me, I felt like I didn't know what to do in those areas because the way that I was raised was to look down on that and to not go there myself. So how can I felt like, people were needing something from me, and their emotions were too much. And I think the way that started shifting for me had a lot to do with the love of Christ, and the way that some of my most, I would say, closest relationships started changing that. But some of the biggest changes, I would say, came from some pain in my own life through a breakup. I started seeing that I was just like everybody else, that I had feelings and hurt, that and crying was not something I did very often, and not something I wanted to do in front of others. And whether it was tears of joy or tears of sadness, it wasn't something that I was raised to do. My dad was 7 years old. I remember crying like any normal kid, and I was treated like an adult and spoken to like an adult, like as if I was ridiculous for having emotions. And I remember having moments with my dad that I'll never forget, that really gave me the message that was not okay. And I didn't know how much that was driving me, and I didn't know how much that discipline and that message was affecting the choices that I made pretty much throughout my whole youth, and relationships with men, relationships with women. And I felt safer with women, but especially with men. I would say that mantra carried into my relationships with men, and it affected the way that I didn't allow myself to be needy, especially with men. And I was always the girl that said, I'm never going to be like those girls. I'm never going to be like those needy drama people. But when I was always like that, it was undercover though. I always had those feelings, always had the needs to be loved and to be wanted and pursued. I just never thought that those were things that were qualities. I didn't think that those were valid feelings, and so I never made room for that in my life. But I would say that it was out of this breakup that I experienced about 5 years ago that brought me to a really humble place, because I experienced some pain, and it was really bad. And I felt like, okay, this is what everybody else is crying over. This is what people. This is worth getting emotional over, because it's so painful. The hurt was so painful that I was humbled by it. I was truly humbled by it, and I felt, in a sense, awakened by that in a good way. I felt thankful to feel. I felt thankful to be alive, and a lot of that thankfulness also came because there was people there to support me. Some of my closest friends, women friends, were there to support me and to say it was okay for me to cry when the voices in my head were of my dad saying, this is needy, this is stupid, why are you crying? That was the voice in my head, but the people outside of that I think God put in my life were saying it's okay and it's understandable and it's valid, your feelings are true, you're not making too much out of nothing, it was constantly, God fighting for me through people and speaking up into my life in that way and giving me grace and accepting me and not, they didn't look at me as somebody who was needy and pathetic. They looked at me as somebody that was needy, but that was really strong for being that vulnerable. And that's when that started shifting for me. And I would say it's been a huge process, but a life-changing process. Understanding God's grace for me and the way that He views me, and no longer do I want to pride myself in being some stoic person. Like, I used to have so much pride about that. I used to have so much pride in not being needy and not being vulnerable, as if that was something adding to my life in some way, and it really wasn't. I hope to be always pursuing growth and being broken and being needy and being okay with my own needs so that I can be okay with the needs of others. I realized too that that's another way that the way that I was raised was stopping me in caring for people, because I wasn't accepting of where other people were at as well. Like, me not being okay with my own needs was also getting in the way of myself, of being okay with other people's needs as well. There's so many things about the way that I was raised that I think got in the way, not being okay with my own brokenness and my own needs and my own vulnerability affected hugely the way that I related to other people. But I would say that it's been a huge change and a huge part that God's healed in my heart, and I'm glad to be able to use my heart the way that God made it to be used, and to risk, even if it's scary, to care for people, even if they're not going to care for me back. People are worth it to me, and I feel like that's really Christ living inside of me, because I allowed Him, and it's been transforming. It's been life-changing in that sense.